Congratulations. Oh, it's 6:30 on the dot. Can you start since it's listed first?
Sure. All right, well, we'll call to order this meeting, this joint meeting of the Workforce Housing Committee and the Community Development Authority. And Daphne, would you please do the roll call?
Okay, Hanairo,
Here.
Pickle,
Here.
Famularo,
Here.
Nugent,
Here.
Bruce,
Here.
and then Adams, Roden, Huang, and Wolf are absent, but we have quorum.
Great, thank you.
And Schaefer's here on Zoom.
And then calling to order
Crystal's on too, I'm sorry.
the Community Development Authority as it's past 6:30. Can you assist me with roll call?
Cole,
Present.
Oaks, Oaks,
I know sometimes she comes in or doesn't have her video on. So
She is on the Zoom. We'll.
Is her
we'll
video
watch for
on?
Oaks.
Yes.
Um,
Not
Lori,
yet. Here.
Schaefer,
Here.
Nelson,
Here.
and Mayor Kuhn is present.
Oh, and Carrie's showing on video. Carrie, can you say that you're here?
Kari, Oaks,
I don't think she realized it's roll call.
Oaks, are you here?
I am here. Sorry, I had a volume problem.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Wakely and Sandoval are absent and excused.
Okay. Well, if I may, I'll kick us off. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us, CDA. The Workforce Housing Committee has spent this past year working really hard to try to get our arms around workforce housing, affordable housing in Middleton, and what we as a city need to be doing. We've been researching our housing needs. We've been looking into possible options for us to increase the number of affordable housing units in the city. And what's driving our work and our timeline actually is both the need, of course, because it is so great, but also the upcoming opportunity that we have here in Middleton to tap into a source of funding specifically for affordable housing. And that's through the closure of our tax increment District 3, and then a 1-year extension to use that final increment for affordable housing. At least 75% of the funds that we would have in there, we would need to put towards affordable housing, and the remainder could be used for any kind of improvements to our housing stock. And those funds can be used all throughout the city, not just in the TID 3 area. So we're pretty excited about this. Council is excited about this. And that's why the Workforce Housing Committee has really been trying to come up with some recommendations that we can present to council for, first of all, taking that 1-year extension of TID 3, because it's not a given that that will happen, but it seems like council's leaning in that direction, and we certainly urge them to do it. And we have some ideas for what we think an affordable housing program might look like, but we recognize it's too early for us to be recommending that. And so we have some ideas for how to flesh that out. We heard from several speakers. Our meetings are recorded, of course, and I encourage people to look up these different meetings for 2024 if you have any interest, because we heard from Kurt Paulson about the housing crisis we face along with the rest of Dane County. We heard from Amy Bliss with the Wisconsin Housing Alliance, and she shared information about factory-built homes, including their efficiency arising largely because of economies of scale. Olivia Williams with the Madison Area Community Land Trust spoke with us, and that's the land trust benefits historically marginalized populations at the lowest income. So it was interesting to hear from her. Kelly Hilliard of our city staff, she's our sustainability coordinator, and she reviewed the Energy Navigator project that the city has been funding these past 3 years. This is a project that takes existing multifamily housing, 2 to 4 units, I think it is, and through an application process, those buildings can be retrofitted, made more energy efficient, more comfortable, and in some cases, solar is actually being put on. So the purpose is to lower the utility costs and make the homes more comfortable for the tenants. And then finally, we heard from Alex DeSena about the Dane County Regional Housing Strategy and also how other communities in Dane County have used their TID extension funds, because a lot of our peer cities have done that, and we want to learn from their best practices. We also reviewed previously identified priorities for housing that are in our comprehensive plan as a city, and the previous recommendations prepared by earlier iterations of the Workforce Housing Committee. We completed the League of Wisconsin Municipalities Housing Ready Checklist to help us identify where we stand, what we still need to do, and how we can prioritize things. And then many of us attended workshops, webinars, and other events because, you know, in Dane County and throughout all of Wisconsin, housing is such a crisis that everybody's been talking about it. So there've been a lot of other opportunities for us to learn about affordable housing and programs that we might be able to implement here. And so tonight, I don't know if everybody has a paper copy, but it's on the screen. Tonight, we wanted to meet with CDA to present our draft recommendations before we consider taking them to council. And why did we want to meet with CDA? Well, there's a reason. We'll get to that as we go through the recommendations. But all the research we did helped us to create a set of draft recommendations. And what we've got in here is a little bit of background in our memo to explain, you know, what the situation is, why we're concerned about housing. And then on the next page, we actually lay out 6 points. And the first one is to definitely go forward with the 1-year extension. We think that's important to do. And the second one is where you all come in, because we think it's a good idea for council to change the scope and the purpose of the CDA. First, we're recommending it would become a citywide authority, not just for the downtown. We also think council should grant CDA authority over the city's activities related to housing, whereas right now that is specifically not part of the CDA's purview.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to pause. This is good stuff. Abby, can you assist me with everything that Alder Haniro is saying and then couch it in the state statute
Sure.
for CDAs? Because I want to make sure that the CDA is fully aware. And I think some of you have been reminding me of this over the last year. So this is probably not a surprise, but especially for anyone watching. Can you assist?
Yes. Housing and Community Development Authorities is in Wisconsin code. The statutory reference is 66.1335. And under the section on authorization, a city may, by a 2/3 vote of the members of the city council, adopt an ordinance or resolution creating a housing and community development authority, which shall be known as the CDA of the city. And then it further states it is a separate body politic for the purpose of carrying out blight elimination, slum clearance, urban renewal programs and projects, and housing projects. The ordinance or resolution creating a housing and community development authority may also authorize the authority to act as the agent of the city in planning and carrying out community development programs and activities approved by the mayor and common council under the Federal Housing and Community Development Act of 1974. And I think the members who have been on the CDA for a while remember that we did have this on an agenda. We had the whole state statute and reviewed it. I think it was sometime during the pandemic we were fully remote. I remember that. So it was a couple of years back. But certainly this is the type of things that Alder Heniro is suggesting are well within the purview.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and as I was saying, it's in state statute that community development authorities are actually housing and community development authorities, but in the Middleton municipal code, it specifically says the common council elects not to grant the community development authority the optional powers of the plan commission pursuant to the statute that Abby just read. So that is a change that we would need to make. And that is a change that the Workforce Housing Committee is recommending. We also recommend consolidating the Workforce Housing Committee with the CDA because it doesn't make sense to have two separate entities working on this. Council in the strategic plan, we identified consolidating committees as a good thing for us to be doing. We have a lot of committees. The staff spends a lot of time tending to those committees, and it's hard to recruit people to serve on all these committees. So we're trying to consolidate to the extent we can, and Workforce Housing thinks this is a good opportunity to consolidate. That would mean that our committee would disappear. Under state statute, there are 7 members to be appointed, 2 from council and 5 citizen members to be appointed to CDAs. I think your membership is near that now. And so all of us, we're working to put ourselves out of a job, but it's certain that we'll continue in some way, shape, or form to be engaged in city government.
There are many committees that need applicants. And I love people who show up and have passion. So please consider other committees in the future.
So note that we don't recommend a specific program. That will take some additional research and effort and work. But we did hear from a number of other municipalities, and what they're doing can be distilled into the 5 things that we have showing on the screen now. First one being buy. I was on a webinar where we were hearing about some other municipalities and what they had done. And they had, $500,000, $800,000 in their funds. And I thought, wow, our estimate is closer to $10 or $12 million. So I asked, what would you do if you had had access to $10 million instead of just 500,000? And they all were like, buy. We would buy property. We would acquire things. If you've got the money to do it, find, those properties that you might be able to use. So that one's on the list. Building. The reason to buy something would be to ideally build something on it, some affordable housing. And we're interested in all types of housing, including condominiums, because the market and the regulations just aren't driving the development of condominiums. So that's where the government needs to step in. Financing. A lot of municipalities make grants or down payment assistance available. So that's something that we would consider, recognizing that it might create it might be a very labor intensive activity that would be best contracted out to a bank in a partnership. Refurbishing. I mentioned the Energy Navigator project and how that is taking naturally occurring affordable housing stock and working with the landlords to upgrade everything. Both, we're doing it mainly because we're trying to make the city more reliant on clean energy and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. But certainly the effect is for the tenants to help lower their utility bills. And then finally, to educate. This is something that Sun Prairie does really well. We've talked about maybe borrowing the template of their website it's a housing. They work with the Tenant Resource Center. They're actually a satellite office of the Tenant Resource Center out at Sun Prairie. And they've got a lot of information available to help tenants, home buyers, and just share information. So we'd like to do that in Middleton as well. And then we have an idea for rent abatement and rent retaliation ordinances, which is something that could be done much sooner than the closure of the TID. And then finally, we want any affordable housing program in Middleton to focus on affordable living and not just affordable housing. And some of the things that make living affordable is reducing your energy costs, so increasing energy efficiency in your home, using renewable energy. And then also your transportation costs really contribute significantly to the cost of living. And so if we can somehow concentrate development in the proximity to existing transit corridors or businesses that are walkable, that will do a lot to reduce the number of trips that people are taking individually in their cars. That will reduce a burden on all of us who do have to use cars. And it would be better for the residents to not have to use a car to get everywhere they want to go. So those are our recommendations, and I wanted to pitch these to you to give you a chance to look them over while I was talking. And we welcome hearing from CDA members about what they think. And I would be remiss if I didn't turn it over to my vice chair or any other members of Workforce Housing if there's something they would like to add that I perhaps did not mention.
The only thing that I would add is, the availability of the funds is why now is a primary driver. But I think also the city is ready for it with the kind of large revision of the zoning plan and changes that were made there. The city is ready for the kind of development. And that's the thing that we asked specifically with developers that we had come and speak to us is, what barriers exist within the city. And a lot of it comes down to the finances. So the fact that we have favorable zoning for these kinds of development, that we have the funds coming available for it, means that we can meet and rise to the challenge that's ahead of us here.
Thank you for that.
One more thing I wanted to add, you notice our name is the Workforce Housing Committee. The reason we're calling this an affordable housing program is because we also want to make sure that seniors are welcome. And, there might be a need for senior apartment buildings, which honestly, I can think of a lot of people who would move from their family-friendly homes into affordable senior housing if they could, and that would free up that housing stock for families who want to come into Middleton. So that's why we were specifying affordable housing instead of just workforce housing.
Thank you for clarifying that. It is a hot topic. This is a lot to take on. There's a lot of great things that are being shared, and I appreciate everyone on workforce housing having talked about this over the last few months and put forward such great ideas. And I want to take a pause for the CDA if they have some initial thoughts. I know that the first topic is the discussion of TID affordable housing extension. So just, and Abby, can you help me? Does it end in 26 with that 1-year extension to 27? Is that correct?
So, the city is looking at potentially closing Tech District 3 early. The end of the expenditure period is 2025. And so after September of 2025, the city doesn't necessarily see a benefit to keeping the Tech District open any longer because we are able to prepay all of the obligations that exist on it. So I think the earliest that we would be looking at potentially passing a resolution to extend the TIF district for a year would be in the spring of 2025. And then it would extend the district through the spring or summer, depending on timing of when the resolution gets passed, of 2026. And then that's a
Excellent.
firm closure.
Excellent. I appreciate you sharing that timeline.
And I would just add, to be a little more specific, according to Bill Burns, April 15th of 25 is the latest date for council to adopt the TID extension resolution. And then 12 months later, the TID would close.
Okay. Okay, very good. So I'm looking at I'm looking at the CDA. I think Kari is our most senior member. Kari, so I don't mean to call you out, but
Well, you saved me the awkward moment of raising my hand, so thank
Right?
you.
We always have that
Like, I
hard
knew it was
way.
coming. You're like, I'm just
I
gonna
love it.
preempt her.
Talk to me. What are you thinking?
Well, so first of all, I was so excited for this meeting because I think this is a lot of the other work the CDA does is important, and it doesn't get to some of the like, it helps build community, and we haven't always been able to participate in getting to like some of the like root deep problems that a relatively economically successful community like Middleton has. And so I am super excited about this, and I'm kind of humbled at the Workforce Housing Committee being like, we're going to put ourselves out of a job, which,
Yeah.
you know, like one of my early thoughts is let's make sure we don't lose the expertise and knowledge of the people who have been doing this work for a long time under really difficult circumstances. Some early thoughts I have are, first of all, yes. Second, and I don't know if Alder Nelson is in the room. I'm remote, so it's a little hard for me to
She
say,
is.
but yay. So let's get Katie involved too as a downtown resident. Like, I love the idea of expanding the work of the CDA to the city. I think one of the earliest tasks that I can think of is to make sure that we understand who we're going to do this work for. What are the characteristics of the people who could benefit from the work we're going to do, to make sure we don't miss the mark on doing what needs to be done? Is it people who are food service workers in the city? Is it people who, you know, is it largely single people who are struggling, who might have student loans but didn't complete their degree? Is it young families? Is it, you know, mid-career like people? Is it retirees? Is it everybody? So that, to me, so that we don't do like a ready, aim, fire situation. I love the idea of thinking about transit, and I will just take the opportunity to get back on my hobby horse for like 5 seconds and say, could we resurrect the idea? I don't know what the parameters for funding are for this, for fundable projects with this money, but is there an opportunity to achieve a neighborhood circulator that would help make the BRT redesign of Madison Metro work better for people who, you might have a family where somebody is working in the city of Middleton and somebody else has to go downtown to wait on tables or work at a bank or whatever. Could we help make it easier for people to access the BRT redo as part of this? I don't know the answer to that. And then my final early thought was, how do we make land trust work in an environment where you're not really, if you buy a distressed property, it's automatically somewhere in the low six figures because of real estate costs in the city. I love the idea of land trusts. They've been used successfully to renovate existing properties across the country. But how do we make that work here? I'm done. Thank you.
Great questions. And I'm going to leave the circular sort of off topic. I do love the topic though. How do we make transit work long term? We'll leave that to another agenda, another day. So if you have thoughts on what Kari just said, if you can focus on the stakeholders who would be interested in possibly applying for the grants, and the land trust, because that's going right towards that extension discussion, or if you have a different idea, there's just so much there. And Kari, I totally agree. Yes, that was my first thought, was the extension. Yes. So I'm glad that she called out to you, Alder Nelson. So I'm looking to you. Do you have any thoughts besides yes? I'm not
Yeah,
putting words in
besides
your
yes.
mouth, but yes.
Yeah, Kari, great first observations. I
Mhm.
love it.
Yeah.
This is amazing work that the workforce housing has done. I used to be on that committee, and you guys have really made it digestible, I guess is what the word is. Love the idea of making CDA citywide. I've always sort of been frustrated that it's just for downtown. My question initially is, how much crossover do we have with the Planning Commission and So are we gonna be coming into redundancy with like 3 committees or not? And then what happens to the fluffy stuff that happens on the CDA? Like, do you guys want to be in charge of programming Stonehorse Green and the city landscaping and the holiday planters? Probably not. But it is something that we are in charge of. So, those are just my initial thoughts. But I love your proposal. I just don't know how we work it out.
The logistics. Abby, that might be just a discussion for a future CDA topic. I think it's valid, both our purview and that scope. And if we just expand, or do we change workloads down the road, or do we do both? Excellent. I love those insights. All right, I'm looking at Alder. Oh, please do.
I was just gonna say, I'm also very enthusiastic about this, but.
Oh, I hear
scope-
yes. Go on.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
But just that scope as the concern, if we're, consolidating and expanding to citywide, are we tied to, we tied to 5 citizen members, 2 council, like what's the?
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
5 and 2. You're right. Yeah.
Because it's a lot of work and,
She's saying state statute.
yep, that's what I.
So yeah, I'm glad
But
you're
I would
bringing
also
that
want to
up.
think of ways to
That's a
not lose
lot
the expertise.
Of, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. And how do you do that in the right way?
Right.
And I'm glad that you're bringing that up because, as Alder Nelson said, she was on workforce housing. I did serve a year on it, but it was many moons ago. So this is a very different approach and I really like it. At that time, we just heard from developers who were talking to us to get sort of a first pitch before they went to Plan Commission. And so that was definitely a different approach of what it was. And I don't think that would carry us into that expanded scope to even have our, couple of years experience. So we might have to be thoughtful of our own selves. If obviously I'm chair, so I stay, but if that is a scope that you're like, I really do like dealing with the planters and the music or whatever we do right now, right? That is your jam. And going to the housing as 50%, some of our current members may say, not really my jam. And maybe we look at other committees that might be more of interest, and then maybe we can move someone in that spot. And I'm not saying you, I'm not saying that you need to go, right? You're like, no, I would like to stay. But if
No.
there's someone who's in reflecting on this and I don't believe that this is happening fast. I think this would still be over the next year or so or two.
Well,
Is there a plan for sooner?
As soon as the resolution is approved, work should begin on fleshing out the idea for what the affordable housing program would look like. The money doesn't all have to be spent in that first year. But it needs to be, by the time it closes, we need to have an idea of what it is we would be doing.
I think my question is the merger. Would the merger be immediate or would the merger be, say, after that year extension? Because that's a whole different workload.
No, the merger would take place so that the CDA can start to develop what the program is going to be.
In that case, it would be immediate. So that's back to the timeline.
That would be sometime between now and April 15th.
Right. And in government, that's pretty immediate. So, that brings your question right back to the place that you were saying, which is, this is a large work assignment that was not part of the ethos of, say, when we had talked initially, if you wanted to stay on the committee or join the committee. And I'm saying that because I know Jennifer Cole, who has her hand up, and so does Kari. We'll get you in a second. That Jennifer recently added on maybe just 4 months ago. And when we talked, it was this stuff that Alder Nelson was talking about, which is, we work with the downtown activities. There are other things. So maybe it's something that you can work with, in talking to Abby. I don't know, Daphne, if you help us out on CDA. I think I see you sometimes, but if you want to talk to Abby one-on-one as the staff, if this is the right fit, or what can you do to prepare if you feel like you're up for the challenge. And that way, we can do the right thing together. Obviously, we will have to go back to much more often meetings and maybe more robust agendas if we go forward. Now, Jennifer, I have called on you, and then right after that, Kari. So Jennifer, please take a.
So yeah, thank you, Mayor Kuhn. I am very much in favor of this. It's been one of my sort of reasons for being on the Community Development Authority, because of that statutory authority, because when I was on council, I did express not confusion, but sort of questioning when we were looking at strategically, how do we align our committees, make more efficiencies out of committees. Workforce housing falls under the purview of CDAs. So I always kind of wondered why we weren't doing this already. I think I've expressed that to many of you here already. So I would be more inclined to be working on these types of issues with the CDA. I, was very much interested in attending and being part of workforce housing. However, that meeting schedule just didn't work with my current meeting schedule. And so I'm very much in support of it. I did have, since I do agree, I think with Alder Haniro, that we would need to look at adapting and shifting the committee concurrently to this. I feel like if we are tasking sort of a brand new version of CDA / workforce housing, or shifting workforce housing within our city's purview of CDA, we would want to be at the forefront of such an initiative, because we would need to be at the forefront of implementation. And so that's where I think I appreciate seeing the resolution language for the TID, for the the purpose of what we would use that final increment for. So I'm hopeful that we could get language about what the revised committee ordinances would look like.
Yeah, that's a good
Quickly.
point.
I don't think that would be such a huge lift, because I think my preference would be that council reviews both at the same time, so that they understand that the resolution to extend the TID and then the affordable housing initiative or initiatives would be under the purview of that new committee. I think doing them separately would be kind of confusing and after the fact. But looking to the 5 activities of the affordable housing program, I just want to ask a question about the language within the resolution itself, because I think it would be challenging to use the I worry about implementation of all 5 provisions of that resolution, or of the purpose of the housing affordable housing initiative. So I just worry about the use of shall, and then also the and after item number 4. Not getting into wordsmithing here, but wondering what if I don't want to beholden what the future state of the committee to having to complete all 5, when in fact there might not be, and likely not, enough funding to do all 5 things. So, per the purview of the committee, what would be their recommendation to prioritize this list?
I think that's very wise, Jennifer, and I appreciate that. I'm going to pause on that, because I think that's the number 2 item, but you're right, because it wraps into what was being shared before. But the prioritization was striking to me prior to the meeting, and I was looking through it, and I didn't I didn't share out because we're supposed to have this conversation in, the committee. But as we are looking at it, please keep that on the forefront of your mind. If there's something that strikes you, or if there's another program that you're interested in, because I like the list. I could see some prioritizing one way or another, but there is a breadth of things out there, and someone might have heard something that they feel would be healthy for the city of Middleton. But again, thanking the Workforce Housing Committee for pulling this together in such a robust manner. It is delightful. I'm really, really glad that you guys have done this hard work. Kari, I know you were very patient. Do you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that's fine. I just had a question in terms of the workload. What by state and city statute is permitted in terms of forming subcommittees that might pull in some of the knowledge and expertise of the Workforce Housing Committee for people who might want to stay involved? Could we use a subcommittee structure to help distribute the workload a little bit and pull in new members of the community?
Kari, that's a really good question. Now, Abby, can you help me? If it's a subcommittee, doesn't it have to be of these 7 members? Or can you pull in extraneous members to a subcommittee?
If it's officially designated as a subcommittee, then it would need to meet all the same open meetings requirements of the official committee or CDA. There are some committees of the city that use working groups that will do research offline and report back to their larger committee without having any authority to take any action. There also cannot be a negative quorum or a quorum of the committee on a working group. I guess we would need to research it a little bit more, Kari, if you have specific thoughts of how it would look into it.
Yeah, I'm thinking, Kari, that, and I mean, I could be totally wrong, but I think if we do a subcommittee, we have to take a couple people out of the 7. Because I think, Abby, do you remember how we do that for the Arts Committee? Or Alder Nelson, you might know, because on Arts Committee, we have like, I don't know, maybe 10 members.
We don't have subcommittees, we have working groups, but we
Okay.
still can't have a forum.
All right, and of the working group, are they current members of the Arts Committee, or are they other people jump on?
Yeah,
Mostly current members, but there are some other community members that are just listed. They use it a lot for event planning, where you don't want to like have a long committee meeting talking about how many tents you're gonna set up. and,
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
was just
That makes
looking
sense.
at the statutory, requirement for housing and community development authorities. And it's under appointments of members, it says the mayor shall, with the confirmation of the council, appoint 7 residents having sufficient ability and experience in the fields of urban renewal, community development, and housing as commissioners of the CDA. So mayor appoints 7 members. And then it says 2 of the commissioners shall be members of the council and shall serve their term of office as council members. And then it talks about the 5 non-council members and what their terms should be. So it does look pretty specific that it is limited to 7 members for the housing and community.
And what were the topics of experience? Urban,
Urban renewal, community development, and housing. And that is all that it mentions.
okay.
So just to hop in before I go to mute again, like I guess another question is, how do municipalities that have a big and powerful CDA that affects a lot of change in these areas, how do they manage getting that work done administratively with a volunteer committee? Would be a good thing to know.
It's a fair question, Kari, and I'll ask staff to take that one back. I'm thinking that at times we probably struggle with that same question with the plan commission, because I know that it's a heavy lift as I look at Commissioner Bruce and remember how much we were reliant on our specialists and specialized knowledge workers. So we will keep working on that. It's a good question. So, you know, we like a challenge in the city, right? We like to grow and evolve. Any other hot topics? Alder Schaefer, I know you're on there. Any quick thoughts or
Yeah, a couple. I'm mostly listening, but as a member of the council, I can say I very much appreciate Carrie's comments about going citywide. Same with Alder Hanairo, that we no longer live in a city that has a little downtown and a bunch of suburbs of houses all around it. Every single development goes in is filled with retail, and we've sort of expanded and spread. And I think this model, the current CDA is based on an old model that you have a little town, and we work at the depressed parts of the city. I think there's so many things we can do everywhere. Housing is a major issue and spread all over the place. So I certainly agree that I think that's a good thing to push, and we'll push on the council to move this as a citywide entity. I guess the second thing, I'm losing it. That's it for now. I'll come back. As soon as I remember what I was going to say.
Okay, Alder Schaefer, can I ask you on the part one with the 1-year extension of the TID district, are you comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with that, but we have some other issues going on that are not public, I guess. We'll have to talk about that later, how that would impact what we talked about last week at council. But if not, I'm comfortable with moving forward.
That sounds good. Thank you. I'm having a whole moment because I'm trying to remember all of last week. It's Thanksgiving week, everyone.
Yeah, no, we had a move to private.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right. And then the second part of that was combining the CDA and Workforce Housing Committee.
Yeah, can I make that? That was my other comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that, on the council, we get so many committees who sometimes overlap, and we get lots. I think remember Cole was talking about this thing. You get conflicting information, and it gets difficult to wade through. And I think the more we consolidate this committee that has common things, that the message that comes finally to the council will be more solidified, clear, and easier to take action to, and you have more faith in what's coming out of the committee as well. So I certainly support the blending of the two committees. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now I'm looking at the rest of the committee. Is there any other comments from CDA? Asking more because there's a lot in here, and glad that we have a robust discussion. So passing it back to you, if there's any last comments from Workforce Housing.
Anyone have anything to add from Workforce Housing?
I would just want to reinforce, if we go back to the first page, I think talked about the reasons why we were looking at the extension and the needs for housing that we have in the community. I just would want council to take into consideration the serious need that we have to help reach out and make Middleton a more inclusive community.
Thank you. Yes, if there's one number I hope everyone can memorize, it's 318. That's the number of housing units, whether rental or owner occupied. That's the number of housing units every year that we should be building in Middleton to keep up with demand based on population projections through 2040. That's a heavy lift. In District 6, we've got a lot going in, but it's over 10 years. So anyway, well, so it seems like there's general agreement. We have to work out the logistics of all this. I love the suggestions for subcommittees. I'm a big fan of subcommittees. And I understand the concern about potentially duplicating what the Plan Commission does. Under state statute, that can, if the council were to decide that the CDA is going to do it all, that's a possibility. I don't think there's a reason to do that here in Middleton. The Plan Commission works really well. The staff supports the commission really well. So I don't think I wouldn't worry about mission creep, I guess, if I were if I were a CDA member who's continuing. And yes, and I do think time is of the essence. So perhaps what we can do is we're meeting in December, correct? I don't know if
Correct.
CDA is meeting in December, but we can continue to work on the resolution, which we'll turn to next, and refine it. And I agree with Member Cole about the shall language. I know there are some requirements for what has to go in this resolution. We have to specify the number of months and exact dates and everything. But certainly since state statute doesn't really have any guidelines for what can be done with this funding, that's one of the things we learned. It's a great opportunity, especially since there are no hard and fast requirements for what you have to do with the funding, as long as you can document that 75% of it is going towards affordable housing in some way, and the remainder goes towards improving the housing stock otherwise. So I think we will look at how can we tweak the wording of that resolution to make it clear that this is sort of a menu of options and not all items may be selected, but these are the types of things that we would be working on. And if we find out from our attorney that we don't have to be very specific at all, we can take that entire chunk of the resolution out and just refer to a plan developed, to be developed by the CDA. So that's an option as well.
That might be a great idea, and then we can use it to build off of, because I think it's mainly there, maybe they want to flip-flop, a priority from 2 to 3 and 3 to 2, or change one language, one word, or add a phrase,
I think
Very
the
minor
council's good at wordsmithing. We'll figure that out.
Right. Thank you, Alder Schaefer. Yeah, we'll let them work on that too. I will say for the CDA, I would like to pause and let the ordinance updates happen. And I'm looking at Abby as I'm thinking, because if the ordinance is changing, and that needs to go through the LNO, like the city attorney, the LNO, then to council. I'm concerned that if we are jumping to start working on this next piece and then we're told we have to do something else, that we might be overwhelming ourselves. So let a little bit of the process happen in December and convene in January on what was passed for ordinances or is going through the system, and then be looking at what you guys have robustly provided us. That's my thought. I do see Jennifer Cole. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wondering, with regard to to my point about concurrent work on this, I'm wondering if, right, as both committees would be making the recommendation to council, that we would have the opportunity to also help with resolution language as the committee to make that recommendation. If that
Yeah,
makes
resolution would come after. I really think we should pause that as well. I think we have till April, well, spring. I'm looking at Abby on that draft resolution. And, I'm not saying I didn't read it. I did read it. But I don't want to rush. I'm looking at Jennifer for a moment. I don't want to rush what I've been reading for a few days as a need to happen within 2 weeks. And my concern as well is, as people travel for Thanksgiving and are preparing for the holidays, I don't want us to be making a decision because we're expedient and not giving it the attention that we do need to give it. So the resolution, I think, is a very strong framework. And I hear you, Jennifer. I would want us to have that But I feel like the draft should be held from council decision-making until well after the ordinance has cleared. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense to me. I actually have a public hearing before CARC on the night that would normally be our December meeting. So I don't think that the CDA is gonna have a meeting in December. The January meeting would be Thursday, January 9th. And I think by that, we could research examples for how other communities have created their housing authorities and maybe bring a few options to the January meeting for the CDA to consider.
And then could we also add that a robust discussion on number 2, the draft resolution for the extension?
And Abby, what is the date for that?
Thursday, January 9th.
January 9th, because between now and then, the Workforce Housing Committee can refine the resolution and also make some suggested edits for a future ordinance change.
And Alder
Go.
Haniro, CDA will be meeting in December on the 12th, if that helps at all.
I'm not available to staff a meeting that night.
Oh, sorry, you said that.
A public hearing going before the Capital Area Regional.
Sorry, you already said that. I apologize.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with all the ordinances going through, it's just, we would be just talking about everything flying. So I
Yeah.
think it's a good time to pause and let that process happen so we can digest in January. I'm sorry, I cut
I
someone
was
off.
gonna add, that last paragraph that we've got on the screen, all the ideas that we've kind of shared here are things that members of our community, other cities are doing in Dane County. Affordable housing is a regional issue in Dane County, kind of collectively has to do work together on this. So as far as structure of the CDA and groups that they can bring in, we kind of, Daphne has brought just an enormous amount of knowledge in bringing in speakers from other cities in to kind of teach us how they did it. And I would say where we kind of imagine the CDA going is where the city of Madison was maybe 10, 15 years ago. Especially in terms of the amount of money that we're starting with and the amount of money that they started with there. We could use that as a roadmap for how the CDA might go through this change and then look to the future and grow.
I have one final thought. A little devil's advocate here. If this is a heavy lift, does it make sense if we have this statute keeping us to 7-person committee? Does it make sense to keep the 2 committees and have more people working on different parts of it?
I don't know,
Just asking.
Daphne, do you know if the Madison CDA, there's a couple of offices that they kind of work together on this initiative, and the CDA is the one who coordinates it, but there are groups kind of around the CDA that do some of the heavy lifting.
I think if I can restate the question, I think what Alder Nelson is trying to ask is, must this occur by April, or could we keep the Workforce Housing Committee for, say, plus 6 months, just as we are designing out the launch of that $12 million fund? Is that
I'm
fair?
not sure I mind the timeline. I'm just trying to, get the scope of this, and does it require more than 7 people on official duties? And maybe not. But I'm just
So is your
putting it
question
out
more
there. It's
the,
like, should we still have these 2 committees? I understand that we're trying to streamline as well,
Mhm.
but this is a big project we want to take care of and we want to take on. If I'm just not seeing it if I'm seeing it as bigger than it really needs to be, then this question is moot. But if there are ways we can split it and have the two committees, would that help us to have more official on it? Sorry.
I see the point you're making. I would suggest the council's going to have a committee of the whole meeting in January sometime, correct? And we do still have some committee consolidation discussion to have. So maybe this could be a topic of discussion. And between now and then, as Alan mentioned, we did hear from a number of different municipalities and we're aware of others. We could help the staff research this and provide some examples of what other municipalities are doing. I will tell you, hiring a person to oversee housing is something that communities have done with their funds because especially once you get the program ready to launch, you need somebody who can staff that full time, and our planning staff just don't have the bandwidth for that.
Okay, so that's also beyond the scope of item number 1 is adding staff, so please don't comment to that. Still love topics, love all the things. All right, so I think we are at the end of that discussion for the Community Development Authority, and I do appreciate you clarifying, Alder Nelson. I'm sorry if I misunderstood your question.
No, it's fine. Totally.
Cool. And it doesn't look like I have any hands up on that one. Any further from your side?
No.
Okay. Item number 2 is the draft resolution, and I know that it was shared just before, and we had some prior comments, so we will keep those fresh in our minds. Oh, this one, yes. And I do like the layout of this, and I'm just more thanking our workforce housing members. It's very lovely written. And, just saying that we want that 1-year extension under the now therefore part. And the further resolved, I think that's just either that language that we keep more general and then we use it for a template as a guide, or we keep it in, but we can discuss that at the January and February meetings. Abby, if you can help me remember that. And then there's the termination of April of 26, and then notifying the state as appropriate. So I think that's very healthy, and I'm glad that Abby brought it around from the start that this has to be done by April, which means we have a goal of February, March of having this in a good place. Now, if it comes back with more general language, we might say at January, this looks good, and we can discuss what that middle section is, after the fact, or get council feedback because council may also have some thoughts. But I think it's very well written. As for that draft resolution extension, do any of the CDA members have comments or anything that strikes you? Whether it's parts that you love, you must keep, we must have, or supporting or looking forward to January discussion. Speak now. Kari?
I would just support the earlier offering of softening the shall language and removing and in favor of or in the resolution of this, in the be it further resolved clause.
Thank you for sharing that, and I'll ask staff to take that one back. Because when we look at it in January, we can take a look at that. Thank you, Kari. Anybody else?
Any thoughts from workforce housing? We'll be talking about it again in December.
It looks like Jennifer has her hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kuhn. Just now wondering, right, because this ordinance or this resolution would you know, yes, we're doing this in concert with maybe some committees restructuring. But wondering, since it is also then standalone, if the authority of like who will be doing this work, who will be working on initiatives of how affordable housing, if that should be identified also in this resolution. Just a question.
I think it's a fair question. I don't know if in resolutions we go to that granular level, but I think it's something we should be talking about in January. And perhaps Abby can provide what those other city examples do and how they leverage those resources. Maybe Abby and I can have a talk before, then we can bounce some ideas. But if anybody is looking to volunteer from the CDA and would like some leadership opportunities, I know I love a good housing topic, and boy, I can think of some ways to grant write something and ask for grants or look through packets. I'm really good at looking at through packets, so maybe I'll help too. Kari, I see your hand is up, but maybe it's up from before. I'm not sure.
Sorry.
No
User-
worries. Yeah, no worries. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so I feel pretty good about this. All right, anything from the CDA?
From workforce housing? No.
Oh, I'm
We're-
sorry,
we're-
from workforce housing.
Like I said, we'll have another opportunity yet this year to talk about this, and we'll take some time to refine the resolution. By then, Daphne may have gotten some insights from our city attorney to let us know what and also some templates to base this off of. And we'll look forward to I'll look forward to talking with the committee of the whole in January. And I just wonder, do we want to try to schedule a second joint meeting, or staff, how do you feel? Like in the February timeframe after we've
I
each
was
had a
gonna
chance to
say,
meet?
yeah, give us at least January to meet as the CDA, but I would be very happy to have a February meeting.
Okay.
So we can share some ideas and best practices.
Maybe we could look at either February 13th or the 17th, because those are normal.
I'm free that week.
The 17th is President's Day, not that it matters to me because I'm retired, but I don't know if people get that day off. I'm not inclined to make people work on what otherwise is a holiday, but I'm good.
Also my birthday.
Oh,
But I
is
can-
that
I can
is
make
that
it
a
for my
plus,
birthday.
or is that yes, you want
We got-
cake?
Either
or-
way.
We can
Don't
bring
have any plans
cupcakes.
yet, so.
Well, we could look at the 13th, which is the CDA's normal meeting date, Thursday,
Yeah,
That would work for me.
There's a parks meeting the 17th as well.
okay.
So the 13th for our joint meeting.
Send out a form check just to make sure that we'll have a form.
I appreciate that. I know that we sometimes try our best. And so that would be greatly appreciated. All right, hearing no other topics on the draft resolution extension, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn CDA.
And since we have reached the end of our agenda, I will adjourn the Workforce Housing Committee. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank you.
everybody.
All right. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Yes, thank you for that reminder, Alder Schaefer.
Thank you.